Everybody, that's up. Yay, awesome. Welcome to the October meeting of the Local Access Forum. I'm your interim chair. I'm your chair for this meeting. I'm going to be handing over to my excellent colleague Nick for the two meetings after this. And then we're looking for volunteers after that. So have a think. We've got some welcomes. I'd like to welcome Clara, who's the engagement ranger for People of the Peak. Welcome, Clara. Also has superb taste in trousers, just saying. Wearing the same outfit today. We've got Christine from the Youth Voice Collective.
Christine unfortunately can't make it. She sent her apologies. So in her place, Clara, as well as being engagement ranger, People of the Peak project support officer, she is also on the Youth Voice Collective. So we can say a little bit more about that. Christine, who was due to join us, has been stuck in rush hour traffic. She was observer this time, and this is part of our plans to have a youth student representative on the Local Access Forum. So I can say a little bit more about that in the member update. And we can also talk a little bit about Youth Voice Collective in the member update and ask Clara if she wouldn't mind chipping in on that, please.
Brilliant. Thank you. We've got Jess. Do you want to say hello, Jess? Do you want to say anything about Jess as well?
Jess is our trainee farm advisor, and she's been involved in a number of access projects where we've been looking at linking in conservation and access and engaging with people about what they're seeing on site when they're out and about, with all the interpretation work as part of that. So welcome, Jess. She was keen to come along to Local Access Forum and find out what it's all about. And there'll be an opportunity to meet both Clara and Jess and for any questions that they have after the meeting. Thank you.
Super glad to have you both on board. I think you're also dragging down the mean age of the meeting by a couple of years, so we're very grateful to that as well. Thank you. We've got some apologies. We've received apologies from Craig, Jill, Rob, Alistair and Paul, and I think there's a couple of other people not here yet. Oh, and Austin. Thank you.
And Rob has joined us.
Oh, he has. Sorry, Rob. Hi, welcome. Thanks for coming. Just to note also that we've got a new email address, which is pdlaugh@peakdistrict.gov.uk. Do you pick that up, Sue?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's your contact for all things laugh related in between the meeting. No audio.
If you press the horizontal bar at the bottom, there we go.
There we go. Yeah, they do. And I think the only other thing to say is that we're going to trial a midway break if we can keep to time. And only I have the document that says what the timekeeping is, so I'm not going to tell you. But if we can keep to time, we can have a 5-minute comfort break in the middle of the meeting. But let's see how that goes. Okay, so I think let's first of all look at the minutes of our June meeting. And looking to approve them. Would you mind if anyone has any comments on page 1, page 2, page 3, and page 4? So we can accept those as approved. I'm not seeing any hands. Let's talk about the items for update, and if there's any updates which are not mentioned in the minutes.
Would you like me to pick up on?
I would love you to. Thank you very much.
Okay. In terms of the actions, the majority of these are picked up in the updates and the agenda items. But there are a few matters arising. One is in terms of the request from the chair and vice chairs for an update on the budget, and I wonder if Phil, whether you'd be willing to give an update on the budget. Thank you.
Yes. So the National Parks budget, we are awaiting news from government of what our next 3-year settlement will be. So we're currently in a year where we received the largest ever cut to our funding in 1 year, which was nearly 9%, although we did get some extra capital to spend. So we're currently kind of living through that and have already had to make a number of cuts this year. We're now waiting to hear what the next 3 years hold. It's frustrating that we don't know when we'll hear, and it's obviously frustrating we don't know what we'll hear, but the kind of mood music is it's not going to be great given the overall public finances that we know about. So DEFRA have had a settlement within the comprehensive spending review, so they know what their overall money is. They are now doing business planning to work out how much to allocate to different parts of the DEFRA budget line, and that includes national parks. So we are actively advocating, working with officials, with ministers as much as we can, with partners, to try and make the case for a better funding settlement than we've had over the last few years. We are at the same time planning for the worst, obviously trying to work on getting the best, but we have to plan for what the worst might be. We don't actually know what the worst will be, but we're planning on scenarios where we get a cut. We're given a cut. Now, we're therefore currently in a process of consultation on some further staffing cuts, unfortunately, on the assumption we'll get a cut in our core grant. If the core grant comes in as not being cut by as much as we think, or increased even, we'll obviously pull back from some of the cuts we're currently consulting on. We also are actively working to increase our income in many different ways, because that will give us more sense of control, and we'll be able to make fewer cuts if we bring more money in. So with things like external grants, we're working hard on those, and we're doing rather well actually. The problem with those external grants when we bring them in for projects is they bring the money in to deliver the project, but they don't bring in much money, or no money sometimes, to cover the overall running costs of the organisation. So it doesn't stop the fundamental problem, which is what the core grant really covers, and if that's decreasing, then we don't have those core costs covered. But we're also trying to be more entrepreneurial and creative, so we're doing work around our car parking charging. We're looking at other services, things like what we charge out for things like the legal team. We're looking at planning fees, so we're looking at everything that we can to try and lessen the extent of cuts we might have to make if the core grant is cut. It's the same for all national parks. In England, actually in Wales and Scotland, their funding situation isn't so difficult. But in England, we're all facing the same levels of cuts. And while we've had extra capital money this year to spend, which is wonderful, that comes with the challenge of having to spend it in year. And when you're spent, you can go and buy vehicles, fairly easily. But if you don't need vehicles, if you actually want to do work that requires planning permission or environmental assessments, it's quite hard to get that done in a year, especially if some of the staff who are involved in pushing those things through are being themselves reduced or cut. So while the capital's been good, and there are some really positive things we're doing with the capital this year, it doesn't replace a cut in revenue funding, and as yet we don't know what the next year's capital. There may be more capital for us, but it gets hard to spend capital if revenue is going down, because once you've bought all the things that you can buy, you then are reliant on more kind of detailed projects that require the staff there that need to come out of the revenue funding. So that's the overall funding situation. While the government grant situation is not good, there is a lot to be optimistic around the projects we're bringing in and the other opportunities. So we do have to kind of maintain a positive outlook, but we can't get away from the fact that that core grant is potentially going down quite significantly, and there will be some impacts from that. Happy to take any questions, Chair, if people want to ask.
Charlotte.
Yes. Is there anything that we, either as ALAF or through our representative organisations, that we can do to help support the National Parks aims? And I appreciate that the whole core grant is what will keep everything going, and we need to make sure that in terms of everything that is on the government's agenda in terms of health and well-being, wildlife and all those sorts of things are the things that are not lost in the mix because you don't have the staff to look at the 5, 10, 15, 20-year projects, and those, and in terms of health and well-being and wildlife, those are the timescales that you have to look at. It's not, none of it is ever a quick fix, and is there anything that we can do to help strengthen your case or lobby or any, please would you let us know? Thank you.
So I think there is a lot that can be done. So I think that the delivery of the National Park Management Plan is always done through partnership, and partners do a lot. Now we may have to look to partners doing a bit more if we're dropping away from some areas, so there'll be ways in which partners could help deliver more, and sometimes partners are better placed anyway. And actually what we often play the role of is really convening and bringing people together and kind of inspiring, motivating, showcasing and so on. So we'll need to do more of that potentially, and partners may need to do a bit more delivery. But in terms of the case to government and the advocacy and the lobbying, absolutely, partners are really well placed to help with that, partly because we're constrained about the extent to which we can lobby. But we've seen recently, very recently, a really good, concerted, united effort to put pressure on government to pull back from what they were planning to do around removing the new duty to further the purposes of national parks. So this came in under the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act. It strengthened the duty that public bodies have to further our purposes. The government were proposing to remove that or edit that out. Really great concerted effort, LAF partners, Campaign for National Parks, National Landscapes, people who could really speak more kind of vocally did, and we're now hearing that that has been taken out of the amendments to the Planning and Infrastructure Bill. So that shows that you can make a difference, and we need the same kind of concerted noise and effort being made on the funding for national parks, because all the things we deliver are absolutely forefront of what government are saying are their priorities. You know, nature, access, well-being, climate. We do all of that very cost effectively. And for a relatively small amount of government funding, you know, it's kind of a rounding error in Treasury terms, the amount that we get. So to have that cut has a massive impact on us, not that great an impact across government. So we've got to have people making the case that this is important and it's worth spending the money on.
Anyone else? I think later on during Ben's piece, we're going to look at the briefly at the APPG report, and it seems that all the ambition in that report is quite jarringly discordant with the potential reduction in the grant. So I don't know if there's appetite for us as a LAF to write to local MPs or to write to the MPs who put together the report. We can pick that up when we come to Ben's piece, I think. Thanks.
Yeah, I think targeting ministers is good. I mean, MPs will then do that as well. The MPs locally are all incredibly supportive and don't want to see what's happening. It's really the ministers who are making the decisions, and so I think writing to them so that they hear how much kind of unhappiness, protest, complaint there'll be if cuts are made, I think that might be able to make a bit of a difference.
Brilliant. Okay. Yeah, Louise.
I'm just wondering whether a joint letter from all the chairs of National Park local access forums might be something to send to the Minister as well, because as organisations you'll represent a whole range of different groups and stakeholders from across all the national parks.
Yeah.
So potentially that it might take a bit of coordination. I'm happy to help, but we could give that a try maybe.
Yeah. That's a superb idea. Thank you. Okay, so I think we're midway through sort of matters rising up.
Okay. One of the updates on the tourism charter we could perhaps pick up under matters arising, if you wouldn't mind me coming back to you, Phil.
Yeah, thanks. So the authority approved a tourism charter recently. It's a charter that acknowledges the value and benefit of visitation, visitors, tourists, or just people, not just tourists, they're just visiting, they may live locally, they may live in the park. So it acknowledges all of those kind of benefits to the local economy and to the people coming, but also acknowledges some of the potential impacts, particularly in certain areas that are experiencing a lot of pressure. So that charter's been adopted by the members. We are now, tomorrow, holding a workshop bringing partners together to look at how we enact that charter, take it forward, where's there opportunities to collaborate and try and find some solutions and work together in partnership on these solutions, because some of the solutions are around influencing behaviour and choices that people make, and some of it are around influencing funding around kind of infrastructure, particularly transport and public transport and issues like that. So I'm really excited about the workshop that's happening, that Sarah's organised tomorrow, and following that I would look to the partners actually kind of putting their name to the charter, which gives us a bit more kind of heft when we go to the likes of the regional mayors who now have the devolved transport funding to say, this collectively will help address some of these problems, and everyone's signed up to it.
Yeah, of course. We can pick this up further in item 6.
Okay. Should I do that?
I can do that. So the only other item is to mention that the Turncliffe Common. Sorry, I've lost my place on the notes. I should have let you do it after all. We sent a response to that. There are additional comments from the June meeting. I sent the response, and it was noted at the October meeting. I don't think there's any further follow-up from that. No, that's great. Were we going to talk about that item?
Under membership.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So I think that's all for the actions from last time. So we can move on to the membership of the group. So, yeah, I'm going to pass over to Sue at this point.
Okay, as part of my secretary role, I'm going to be picking up on the membership. We've had one resignation since the last meeting, and that's Charlotte Leach from Chatsworth. Her term came to the end. And Charlotte's role has changed, so Charlotte will still be involved with the forum, but not actually sitting on the forum. And we're keen to have replacement land manager representation as well, because what we try and do on the forum is keep a balance of memberships. As Claire has noted, we are now taking on the chair role, so we have a moving chair role around the local access forum, and what we decided to do is look at a chair for 2 consecutive meetings. So what that allows is as you're coming into the chair role, you sit with the current chair, work through the agenda setting meetings, find out how it all works, So when you actually sit in that role, it's all straightforward, isn't it, Claire? Nick kindly volunteered for the next chair, so Nick will be taking on the chair's role for both the February and the June meeting, and what we will be asking at the next meeting in February, who would like to take the chair's role on for the 2 consecutive meetings. So a little bit of time to have a think about that. Please do come and have a chat with me, with Claire, with Nick about his fears for the for the forthcoming chair role, and of course with our vice chairs who have a lot of expertise in this as well. And that's it in terms of membership. Apart from, I've been looking at all the terms of the memberships, and a number of you have received emails from me saying, "Would you like to continue?" Well, actually, I didn't phrase it as "Would you like to continue?" I said I'm looking at continuing with your role. So I hope everyone's happy to still sit on the forum, because the main benefit of this local access forum, or the main strength of it, is the expertise that everyone brings and that's been built up over a number of new years. So excellent to have fresh ideas coming in, but it's really helpful as well to have that long-term expertise. And finally, we've heard about the potential involvement of the Youth Voice Collective, and one of the things that we'll be looking at setting up, details still to be arranged, but looking at setting up a one year membership role. So that will work a little bit better with students who can hopefully assist for a 1 year on our local access forum. The Youth Voice Collective, I think, I did have some notes on this, but I think actually I'm going to pass over to Clara, if she wouldn't mind coming to one of the speakers and just telling everyone about the Youth Voice Collective, because it's really exciting, the work that's going on. Or Anna, Clara, or Anna, and any more questions on this. Anna, who is speaking on item 7, will be able to also add in extra as well. So if I can pass over to you two, that's right.
Hi, thank you for having us. So the Youth Impact Collective is still quite new. When will we started? February this year. So we're still sort of establishing our roles and what we're wanting to get out of the group and how we can impact sort of within the park and more broadly. Our main aims are to get a really good understanding of what happens within the park. So coming to meetings like this is really useful to us. We're sort of trying to develop our understanding of everyone's roles, how we then might be able to impact and help with you guys as well. So obviously our main interests are improving the ability for young people to live and work in the park and also access the park. So it's quite broad and it will interact quite heavily with a lot of the things that all of you are doing. So we'd like to be as much help to you as you guys would be to us. I think, have you got anything that you'd like to add?
So it's a group of 18 to 30-year-olds. That's how we've kind of set it. And we've recently appointed a chair, a welcoming place lead, 2 nature leads, and that is it, I think. And a potential co-chair, hopefully. And so the group's really starting to kind of establish now, and they're really keen to have their say on decisions in the park and get that youth perspective recognised. So I'm Anna, I'm one of the kind of staff that are kind of project managing the Youth Impact Collective. So we're just working with other teams within the authority to make sure all the kind of legal processes are in place and those links between different teams are there, so that the members of the collective can really have an impact and a genuine say in decisions in the park. And we'll be going into kind of the full recruitment phase shortly. So my role ends in May 2026, but we've got a large funding application currently in place to kind of continue this and wider youth engagement work from that point. So hopefully that'll come good. So thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. Does anyone have anything to say apart from that sounds brilliant? Yeah, Louise.
Just a question. Would it be of use to the group if, I mean, there's obviously people here with all kinds of different expertises in different aspects of access, whether it's kind of national policy or horse riders or mountain bikers or runners or climbing. Or, I guess, does the group, and is it useful for the group to have, you know, people from, say, this group come and talk about the work we do or the work they do around specifically access and that kind of advocacy and all that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think that would be really great. So I can circulate the list of upcoming meetings. So we have monthly meetings that are alternate weekday evening online meetings and full weekend day meetings each month. So if anyone would like to come and kind of just say a little bit about the Local Access Forum, because it is quite an intimidating thing to come into. Yeah, that would be great.
Fabulous. Thank you. Okay. So at this point, yeah. So we're moving on to Ben at this point for his presentation. Are you coming up to the front? Yeah, you can come to. If you come to the front, there's some cables waiting to catch your foot. So just, yeah.
Morning, everybody. Can you all hear me? I've got a very loud voice. But I don't know if you want to press the button or anything.
Yeah, go on, press the button as well.
Morning. Most of you know me because I often say quite a lot generally. I'm going to cough now as well. Everybody's getting involved. It's all right. It's all right. For those who don't know me, on the expensive seats at the back, my name's Ben. I work for Paddle UK. So my role nationally is around policy and advocacy, primarily around the water environment, everything from sewage pollution to physical and legal access to water. But I also do quite a lot of work with other national governing bodies, Ramblers, British Mountaineering, British Horse Society, British Caving, all of them. And we work together as this big Outdoors for All collective. There's about 52 organisations who work together. So this sort of a national piece that I do for Paddle UK, but also we bring together all the national governing bodies who represent outdoor sports, plus a load of other stuff. But that's me. But I'll just take my kind of Paddle UK hat off. No, I'll put it on. I am Paddle UK because I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the APPG report that we did. But before I do, just jumping around a little bit, going back to the point around the writing to the ministers. This is the first female ministerial team, all-female DEFRA ministerial team we've got. So we've got a new Secretary of State in Emma Reynolds, who's Wickham, I think is her constituency, so not exactly Peak District-like, but still there is plenty of access land and farmland, etc. We've got Emma Hardy as Water Minister, who's obviously my key contact. Mary Cray, who joined me for a swim 2 weeks ago at Labour conference. Just saying, in case we want to get her up. She's got a hat on, got swimming, she's well into outdoor swimming. Just saying, if you want to know, see if we can get a visit. So Mary Cray, who you know, the interactions I've had have been good. I don't know about yourself, Phil. And we've got Baroness Hayman, who is a Cumbrian baroness. She's in the Lords, and her remit is access. And I think it's really positive. All really interested in the outdoors. All really interested in the countryside, in nature. Emma Reynolds is new in the job, but you know the interactions that we've had so far seem pretty good. She seems interested. She seems engaged. She's coming from a Treasury background, which is, take from that what you will, but that will obviously bring a different perspective when there are obviously difficulties with financial constraints upon government. But hopefully we'll engage with the positive. Here we go. Right. There's my slide. So I'm just filling up a bit. So, like I said, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Outdoors for All report, which came out. Now, how many of you did your homework? How many of you read the report before the meeting? Well done. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks for the support there, Jeff. Okay, not many, so you can all stay behind afterwards. Unfortunately, because of sustainability and also my budget costs, we didn't print billions of these. We only printed enough for the reception that Sue kindly attended, and then a handful of others. And I only walked away with 2 copies. One is my special one, and the one that I carry in my bag. So here it is. There you go. You can all have a little look later on. So if not, it's online. It's I can send the link round. I should have put a little QR code on. But it is online, and it's freely available on the APPG for the outdoor website. Just before I kind of dive into what's in the report, for anybody who doesn't know what an APPG is, because I'm going to keep using that term, it's an all-party parliamentary group. So basically there are lots of different APPGs on lots of different topics, from Gaza to water to tiddlywinks to something else. It's a group of MPs, cross-party group of MPs who come together on a particular topic, and they use that as an opportunity to discuss policy in that area. They can do certain things, they can write to ministers, they can put together inquiry reports, they can ask questions, they're basically a forum to get together and have a talk about policy issues. Like I said, some of them are about children, some of them are about education, they can be about lots and lots of different topics. We launched the APPG for outdoor recreation and access to nature in May, after a long hunt for a Tory MP to join. Because they're cross-party, you have to have officers that represent cross-party, and we found it quite challenging to find a Conservative MP who would join the ranks of the long line of Labour MPs who were keen to be part of the APPG. But we finally did, and we got the APPG up and running in May. Andy McNay is the chair. Andy McNay is Rosendale and Darwin, which is up northwest way. Some of you, I don't know, but he used to be involved in the British Mountaineering. So yeah, Louise, you might know of Andy. He's a climber, very big into the outdoors, very, very passionate on this topic, having worked in and amongst BMC for a long time. The co-chair is a guy called Phil Brickell, who is Bolton West. And happily, he's my first whitewater paddling Member of Parliament. So after all these years, I finally found someone who's a weekend warrior, who goes out with all the colourful stuff on and gets wet and does all that stuff. So he's actually somebody who feels the pain that I do when I can't access the waterway. So it's great to have that ally. So we've got 2 really good proactive Members of Parliament. So the challenge that Andy laid down in the first meeting that we had, the inaugural meeting, was, okay guys, let's do an inquiry. That's one thing APPGs can do. They can do an inquiry. And I want it done by the end of recess, when that was only about 4 weeks away, and we said, no, we're not going to do that, we can't do that, Andy, that's ridiculous. So we agreed to do a report, an inquiry, that would publish in September, and there was a good reason why we wanted to do that, was because we were hearing rumours that there was potentially the opportunity for the government to do a consultation on access to nature at some point during the autumn, and we wanted to get ahead of that. We wanted to put out a report that kind of set the agenda, really, that said, we found some stuff out and this is what we think. So we set our target for the first week in September to get the report out, and we didn't do too badly. We got it out on the 15th of September, which is when Sue came down and joined the event. And we published the report in the Lords to much acclaim, and I'm going to just take you through some of the headlines. But before I talk about the detail, there's a couple of things. Granted, what Phil said, your comment I think was really important. I think it's not lost on us, all the people who worked on this are involved, that national parks are under some difficult times at the moment. So there's lots of things in this report that say, couldn't we have more of this and do some of that and more of that? It's not lost on us that is quite challenging when when we're asking for more, and some of the bodies that help us deliver that more don't have the resources or capacity to do that. So it's not lost on us. I think it's also important, though, to be ambitious and to say what better looks like, and I'll come back to that at the end of the presentation. One thing I would just hold in mind, I know we're sitting in a national park. I know we're kind of at the HQ of a national park. This isn't about national parks. This report isn't about national parks. I know we are sat in one, but for the context of what I'm going to be talking about, I want you to think about the outdoors on the edge of Derby, on the edge of Nottingham, on the edge of Birmingham, on the edge of London, inside of London, in urban places. This is about access to nature in all places, not just national parks. This isn't a report about national parks. So just to keep that in mind, and it's not lost on us, the challenges that national parks and national landscapes have got. So, just very, very quick background as to how we did it, just so you understand where it came from. The inquiry, so I'm coughing now. The inquiry was facilitated by British Mountaineering, the Ramblers and Paddle UK. So it's an independent inquiry insofar as we got an agency called Fusion Media to write the actual report. But we, Ramblers, BMC and Paddle UK, we ran inquiry sessions. So we basically got experts to come in and talk to us, and we collated that evidence. We also did 12 expert witness sessions. We also ran a written consultation, which some of you might have seen. I'm not sure. I don't know whether some of you put into it. We got 750 responses to that call for evidence. We put it out with 1 week's notice. It was open for about 10 days, and we got just over 750 responses. I don't know what government consultations get. Probably getting the thousands, but still, for the fact that we did it with a 1 week's notice and we had 10 days to collect that evidence, it was incredible, overwhelming response. And I can't say I read every single one, sorry. I read probably about 3/4 of them. There was so many to read, it would have taken me forever. But it was amazing to genuinely see the breadth of people who responded, from local authorities, people in rights of way teams. There was people in national parks, there were people from swimming background, there were cavers, there were hang gliders, there were people who were motorised, people who were non-motorised, there were people who were anti-dogs, people who loved dogs. We got land managers, we got farmers, we got a real breadth of people respond, and I think that gives the report some real genuine weight, because it really did represent a real broad range of views. There was a whole manner of stuff people told us. So it's probably worth me telling you what the actual title was. So what we sought to find out was policy and legislative proposals for expanding access to green and blue space. So that was kind of the headline, and there are a series of questions underneath that we asked people to respond to. And there was a whole manner of stuff people said. There was loads and loads of ideas that we could do this and that. What the report does is it summarises the consensus. So what you read in here, the 40 recommendations that are in here, represent the consensus that we found from all of those 750 plus the 12 expert witness sessions. There was a whole load more recommendations we could have put in, but they were where we were starting to see people disagree, or starting to see 1s and 2s and 3s and 4s. I think that the word consensus is really important, and we've articulated that quite clearly to the ministers and to the DEFRA team who we've passed this on to. There's a lot of consensus in here. There are a lot of people saying similar things from different backgrounds, and that's important. That's really important. This isn't just Ramblers saying we should have no stiles, or it's Paddle UK saying we should have access to waterways. Actually, that's not what we did. It was a report that was independently written, drawn from the evidence that we got, so it shows consensus. So I think that's one thing that's really important just to take away. This isn't Paddle UK report. This isn't a Ramblers report. This is consensus from a lot of people. So I'm really proud about that fact. The expert witness sessions, just so you get a bit of background. So we had about an hour, maybe an hour and a half with each. We had the RSPB, we had National Trust, we had the NFU, Kent and Hertfordshire Councils, that's not the same thing. The Activity Alliance, so we heard from people with disabilities. We heard from the Institute of Outdoor Learning, the Associated Heads of Outdoor Centres, so from an education background, Nature Friendly Farmers, National Landscapes, the Forestry Commission and Natural England. They were just the expert witness sessions. I could do you a really long list of who did the written submissions, but just those expert witness sessions. So just even in that 12, you can see there's quite a breadth there of opinions. So 750 responses, and like I've said, broad range of people, recreational groups, land management groups, statutory public bodies, academic, health, motorised. I tell you what, the equestrians, I'm trying to use the word, the horse riders are in the room, the equestrians, brilliant, did a real job on it, loads of responses, and so did the motorised, non-motorised. And I'll just come back to those, certainly motorised at the end. But lots of great engagement from equestrians, lots of interest and feedback. So it all boiled down to this, 40 recommendations. So what I'm going to take you through is just the 10 headlines. So I'm going to keep using we. I apologise, it's not we. The APPG is the MPs, but I'm going to keep saying we because I was part of writing the report. So apologies if I keep saying we. I'm just going to talk you through some of the headlines. There's 40 in here. I'm not going to talk you through them all. You'd be fast asleep and you'd be shouting at me because we've been way over the time. But I'm going to whiz you through just the 10, and I would recommend you go and have a dig in because there are some that are going to be interesting to some people and some that are not. But it's split into 9 different sections. And the first one is expanding access. So what we heard really, really strong consensus from is people, the two things that are on the board, basically, people want access to more landscape types and people want, to different user types want more access. So at the moment, our access to the countryside is generally quite restricted to people who walk, basically. You know, it's not very accessible for people who use wheelchairs or have disabilities. There aren't many access rights for people who use paddling, who paddle or canoe or hang glide. So actually, it's quite limited the user types who can use our access rights at the moment. So we heard more landscapes and available to more user types was something we heard really consistently. What we sort of didn't quite see a consensus on is how. How do you do that? What is the mechanism that you want to change? What's the piece of law? We did see lots of people talk about a right to roam, a Scottish-style right to roam. You know, lots of people talking about we want right to roam, we want Scottish rights, access everywhere. We saw a lot of that, but we also saw people who said, you know, we just want this specific type, or we want it to be mapped, or we want it to be, we actually don't want any more access, we think we've got enough. So we saw real variance in there, but the general consensus was priority was establishing more rights for more places and more rights for different users. It was a really strong consensus that came through. Let's go on to the next one. Oh, I skipped one, I think. I pressed it twice. Oh, no, there's 2 there. Right. Of course, we've got a lot of access already. And like I said, a lot of it is available to pedestrians. And there's some really interesting ones in here to go and have a look at. But this is the headline recommendation that we picked out, and we felt this was really, really important. If we deal with DEFRA quite a lot, and it feels very much like there isn't a strategy as to how they do access stuff. You have currently got river walks happening over here, you've had a coastal path over here, you've got this happening over here. It's a little bit like there are projects and none of it really joins up, and there isn't really a plan as to how to fund it or what the next 10 years look like or 15 years. And where does it fit into health, and where does it fit into green social prescribing, and what about transport? These things don't really hang together, and it's very bit part. So what we heard really clearly is they want DEFRA, they want the government to have a strategy, a plan. It's just completely devoid of any kind of direction or that goes any further than what's in front. So that was what came out strongly. But the one thing actually that came out afterwards that people really picked up on, I think the press picked up on it, and I know quite a lot of people have spoken to since, was there's a recommendation in there around the removal of stiles. And it talks about the removal of stiles within 5 years and removing the right of landowners to put stiles back in. And that really seems to have picked up people's interest because, of course, that has a massive impact. It has a cost impact, but also a huge possible benefit for people who can't access the countryside because of stiles. And so a lot of people seem to have really warmed to that one or thought that's a ridiculous idea. So it was quite nice to have, quite interesting to see that those different opinions come through. Just as I put this just in, there's a little bit of text in there. It talks about ROEPs, and I thought that might be relevant to this group. So this is to do with the investment and a strategy. So there's a kind of feeling that we got that maybe investment plans could be linked to the delivery of ROEPs. ROEPs don't really have many teeth, and the delivery of them, could it be linked to something that is linked to your funding and, make a really clear plan, then you get however much funding. This is a quote that came in. I do know who the anonymous is, but I'm not going to say that. That would be telling. There's quite an interesting quote to put in there. Rights of way improvement plans required by the Countryside and Rights of Way Act, with specific concern, amongst other issues, for accessibility improvements, are guidance only and without weight. Local access forums are also established by the Crow Act, have brought together wide-ranging lay and professional expertise on countryside issues, alongside public rights of way teams, but have failed to give them any teeth to effect significant change. Neither LAFS nor ROIPs have any funding. You may or may not disagree with that sentiment, but we did hear that quite consistently. We had a lot of local access forums actually write in to the inquiry, and we kind of got that sense that actually ROIPs are nice, but they don't have any teeth, and LAFs are great, they bring people together, but they can't actually affect change, and they don't actually have any money. So that was kind of the feeling we got. This is my favourite one, obviously, so I'm going to talk about this for ages now, I'm not really. This one, it wasn't influenced by me, but we did hear from a lot of water users, individuals, organisations, but also organisations that had a kind of broader remit. I won't sort of disclose who, but surprising organisations that supported the expansion of access rights to include water. So I was obviously absolutely cock a hoop to see other people's championing this, which was great. I will just dwell slightly, just indulge me a second, because this is important. We've got a water reform bill, a water reform white paper that's coming at the end of November. So what? It's all about water regulations. Well, no, there's a potential to do more with that bill. And I'm in with the Minister next week to try and encourage her to see that as an opportunity. When you've got a piece of legislation, yes, it's there to do a specific thing, like reform the water sector, but you can do other stuff with it as well. You can add in. And there are some pieces of existing legislation which we think could be tweaked to certainly benefit water users, but benefit you guys as well. So we've talked before, Jeff, about the Code of Practice and Conservation Access and Recreation. I think there's a real opportunity to use this bill that's coming down the line to update that guidance and use it to require the Environment Agency, to require water companies to enable, facilitate, create, maybe even be targeted to increase access, improve that access and make it more accessible. At the moment it's really wishy-washy. So I think we've got a real opportunity here. Certainly within the next 6 months the bill will land sometime next summer, but the white paper's coming in a few weeks. And there's one on there for the Environment Agency. I'm not going to dive too deep into these. So there's one on governance, strategy and accountability, so long-term plans into public nature with a clear strategy. I'm going to just whiz through a couple of these. This was a really interesting one, and I was fascinated to read quite a lot of the submissions on this. And there was a real... I don't think people could really articulate what they wanted, but they could articulate a problem. So lots of people said the Countryside Code doesn't work. It's not working, and it's not good enough. Not enough people read it. But not many people were able to articulate what it was that they wanted different. We heard people call for a statutory code of conduct, but not really explain what that was. What is a statutory code of conduct? What does that do? We've got one in Scotland, and that's linked to the access legislation. What would that look like here? So they're calling for it, but we don't really know what it would do and how you'd police it. So there was a real variance in opinion. So I think maybe certainly this one, I'm not quite sure we kind of really got down to the specificity, the specificness, whatever, of what it is, but certainly we got the sentiment that the Countryside Code needed change. It only got overhauled, it only got rewritten, I think, 2 years ago, or refreshed, should I say, not rewritten, but there's still that feeling that it's not quite there, and it's not quite doing the job. One of the other recommendations in that section talked about having activity-specific codes, and I'm a big champion of that because we've got our paddlers code, which has landed really, really well. And that was at one time, Natural England were looking at doing activity-specific codes. But that was something that came through really strongly. This is another really interesting one as well, that I think it was a bit Marmite with people. Transform the Ordnance Survey Act to make it free. There's this kind of school of thought that it's all that mapping's there, and it's kind of public, it's owned by the Crown, or it's owned by us, but actually there's a paywall behind the app. You have to pay $29.99 to get the app, and it's great, but not everybody can afford to buy that, and to buy an Ordnance Survey map you've got to go to a shop, and you've got to pay the $8.99 to get the map, and you might not know how to read it. So it was really interesting to hear what people, that being a real barrier for people, is that they don't actually have access to maps. They don't know how to use them as well, but equally it's a barrier to them to be able to go and use the countryside because they don't have they've got the tech, but they can't get the app because they can't afford it. So that was a really interesting one to see come out. A couple of areas now which we didn't kind of anticipate coming through quite so strongly, but we got a lot of responses from outdoor centres or certainly sector experts around education. And this is in an area I'm particularly expert on, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but if you look at the recommendations within this section 6, there are about 3 or 4 that talk about broadly building outdoor education better into the national curriculum, which is ferociously difficult, but giving people an opportunity to have a residential experience was something that was in the landscapes review for 2018. There was a recommendation made in that. And we would like to still see that be part of a children's experience at school, at primary and secondary school. My lad went to Whitehall this morning. I dropped him off at school. He's gone to Whitehall. He's having his residential experience. He was so excited. Didn't even say goodbye. Just walked straight in. So lots. I'm not going to talk to the recommendations in there because there were lots, and they were quite specific around specific changes to legislation that would improve children's access to nature through school. Again, another one that I'm not super expert on, but we heard from a lot of health experts about green social prescribing and how you could change the Health and Social Care Act to embed outdoor education, outdoor access and nature much better in the healthcare system. You know, Wes Streeting has talked about, at pains about a preventative healthcare system, a preventative NHS. We've got it. It's there. It's the Natural Health Service. It's outside. But actually getting Wes Streeting to really understand the power that nature can have in that preventative healthcare has been quite challenging. But there's some recommendations in here which I certainly think the health department should take a look at. Planning and transport, definitely not my area, I'm afraid. I'm sure there's lots of people that floats their boat and ticks their boxes. But I think this one's a no-brainer. You know, really, is improved transport links from green and blue spaces. Really, from lots of people, they just can't get to the outdoors. The transport's rubbish, or they can't physically use that transport. It's too expensive. With lots of things around that. So this was the recommendation in that section. It's worth going and having a look at the other ones in there if that interests you. The last section didn't really have any recommendations, but it was all the stuff that we couldn't really find consensus on. So there's a whole section at the back, section 9, that talks about things like motorised use in the countryside and non-motorised. We had a lot of responses from both sides of that argument, and we didn't really find a consensus. But what we wanted to articulate was it's important that everybody has an opportunity to do the thing they love as long as they do it responsibly. But actually there was no consensus on what the change should be or what was needed in legislation or what policy change. So we put it in the report to recognise that it was talked about. And the same with dog control. Again, another quite sensitive issue. There was no real consensus as to what's the specific thing we want government to do. But there was lots of people saying there's a problem with dogs and dogs are great. So there was no real thing we could hang a hat on. And again, permanent versus permissive access. Lots of these sort of issues that we couldn't really get to in the report. So that gives you a bit of an overview. There's only 10 I've shown you there, and they just sort of skim the surface. There's 40. Go and enjoy them at your leisure later. Go and pick through them. Some of them. I'd be really interested to hear your feedback. Genuinely, I've heard mixed reviews. Everybody seems to have appreciated that it's been done, but there are certain things that people have liked, some people have not liked, some things are a bit too ambitious, some people they think we should do tomorrow. So it's really interesting to get your feedback, so very, very keen to hear. And I know some LAFs, and I was copying on a couple of letters from LAFs to the APPG, giving their feedback of people saying this is great, we love this, actually this is you're missing this and that sort of stuff, which is great. That sort of conversation, that debate is really, really good. And that kind of leads me to the no, I'm going to say finale. It's not really a finale. I'm not going to go, whee. Why? Why am I bothering telling you about this? And what's this got to do with the LAF? Well, it's important you know about this stuff that's happening, this policy stuff that's happening, because it could have an impact on you. If we get an access to nature bill in this Parliament or the next, then there's going to be a lot of consultation that's going to happen. On a personal level, there's lots in there to be interested in. your networks will be interested in this report. But I also think, and I was just reading this actually, this annual report, and it says on here, the forum advises on the improvement of public access for the purpose of open air recreation and enjoyment, giving regard to the needs of land management, conserving the natural beauty. If we as a LAF are advising on the improvement of public access for the purpose of open air recreation, we need to know what good looks like. And generally, I think most of us know what good looks like, and we can advise on through letters and stuff. But it's also, I think, really important for them to know what better looks like. What does it look like if we could do things better? Or, you know, where are the gaps? Where are the things that we need more of? And I think it's important for this group to have a view on that as well. You know, whether that's because we're going to influence policy in the future, but just simply because we should be looking for continual improvement. We should be looking for the people who aren't represented, the people who can't use the countryside, and how we might be able to improve that either at a local level or at a national level. So that's why I'm kind of asked to put this on the agenda, just to spark some debate. You know, whether you like the report or not, that's fine. There's some interesting stuff in there. But what might you do with it as a LAF? What could you do with it? What are the things? You know, possibly you could write to the Secretary of State. But I think going right back to the start, I think it'd be well worth writing to the APPG. You know, with your thoughts collectively as a LAF. You know, I'm sure Andy, the chair, and the vice chairs would really like to sort of welcome some feedback on that. Last of all, just before I finish talking, what next? I hear you shout at me. So what next? What are you going to do next? So next week we've got another LAF meeting. Oh, there's my notes. That's bad. It is worth saying there's a new APPG for national parks starting next week as well. So it's conveniently right after our APPG meeting. So that was planned seamlessly. There is also a new APPG, although it's not registered yet, for outdoor education. So the three of us, the tripartite of outdoor countryside use, shall be championing all these things through each of the different APPGs. But what next? Well, I think it's really important. I've mentioned the water reform bill. That's very imminent. Within the next few weeks, it's coming down. There's an opportunity there. Possibly there might be a consultation green paper at some point in the future within this parliament. Maybe, possibly, and that would be a big opportunity. Maybe even that might lead to a bill in the future. We hope that would be. If they don't, somebody told me this the other day. It's a really interesting fact. If Labour don't do anything on access, they would be the first Labour government since 1945 to have not brought any access legislation forward, which I think is quite an interesting thing to dwell on, really. Which I'll be saying to the minister next week. You know, there's been 4 Labour governments since the war, and each one has brought some form of access legislation. So it's important that this one does too, to carry on that trend. But one last little date for your diaries. The end of November, I think it's the 30th, marks the 25th anniversary of the Countryside and Rights of Way Act. So we've got a big anniversary coming up in a few weeks. Now I'm going to mark that by looking forlorn and sad in videos, social media videos, to say, look what, 25 years and we're still waiting for our access for water users. But I know the Ramblers, I know the BMC, they're putting on some walks and putting on some social media and news pieces and things like that. Might be something that the LAF might want to reflect on as to, is there something that you want to do? Obviously the Crow Act formed the LAF, and this was the home of everything. So that was just something I was going to leave you. We're going to be doing an MP drop-in session just a few days before the actual anniversary to get MPs in the room. We're hoping to get a Westminster Hall debate and raise a bit more interest in this. So that's it. I'm sorry I haven't got one of these to hand you all out. You're very welcome to have a leaf through this copy, or just go and check the one online. But I would very much recommend you go and have a look through all 40 of the recommendations. It is reasonably light reading, it's not too heavy, don't worry. And that's it. Happy to take any questions.
Hi there. I've been disabled for about 10 years. I'm sitting in my wheelchair now. I live at the bottom of Lewes Hill, and I have probably the mark of the most effective wheelchair possibly in the world. It's a 4-wheel drive electric wheelchair. It will climb supposedly 45-degree slopes. It certainly do 40, but I go up backwards rather than, because if I want to turn round, it's going to roll over. So one of the things that I can't do is get to the top of Lewes Hill. My wife and I have lived there for 20 odd years. When I was younger, I did go up there. It's a public footpath, so I'm entitled to go on a wheelchair. What you said about Styles is really interesting to me, and I know other people as well. Indeed, there's not so far away, there's a paramedic, and she's a radiologist as well, and they can't take their pram along from Fullwood Styles because it's a style. Fullwood Styles, I think, is probably just an accidental name, and to go on Edale Road is a little bit more dangerous. So Styles are a real obstacle for me. The problem is, if you replace a stile with a gate, there's an issue there as well. I'll go as an aside, by the way, as Sue knows, last week I went all the way down Edale Valley onto Edale, had a drink in the Nag's Head, and then went up. I tried to get up to Holland's Cross. I couldn't do it for two reasons. There's a 45-degree set of concrete stairs, but I don't think my buggy would have done it. But if I got through up the stairs, I couldn't have got there. And when I was going up past Mam Tor, I just had a little look again. I would deeply, deeply like to go onto Mam Tor again. It's impossible. There is a bridle way that takes me along. It's about that wide. However, at that angle, it's only about that wide. So if I make a mistake, I'm going to roll over. I've got a roll bar. So that's inaccessible. The new gate that's been put in, it's got beautiful, beautiful wooden stoops. I suspect it's about 2'3" wide. I didn't get off to measure it. That would have been difficult. But the problem with stiles and gates is this. When I was younger, for 30 years, just as a hobby, I kept a farm, cattle, sheep, horses, etc. And across one of our big fields with stone walls, there was a stile. I took it away and put a gate on, only, a narrow gate. The problem was that people used to keep leaving it open. That was solved immediately with a spring that cost me £2.50 or something from Ayres. So if you are, as a community, not you personally or Phil or whatever, if there is an influence to eradicate stiles, and I can see why ramblers want to get them, they really need to be changed and replaced with gates. And the gates need to be wide enough to let disabled wheelchairs and things. Now, not everybody's got an all-terrain wheelchair, but there are lots of places that I go that many of my friends who are disabled can't go because they can't go through the narrow bits. So yes, replace the stiles. That would be lovely. It's not going to be cheap. 5 years is an ambitious plan. And secondly, when new pedestrian gates are put in, can they meet the legislation, which I think is a minimum of 90 centimetres wide? The Severn Trent Water are absolutely fantastic. They've replaced a lot of their gates with, I know the last meeting person, a lady, didn't like it because they're galvanised. They're a metre wide, they're on a spring. They're just absolutely fantastic. I've spoken too long, but it's really, really would give me greater access.
You make a perfect point, brilliant. And I can't speak to that, I can't answer that. What I can say is you've kind of started to press on where the limitations of this report is. So the report represents the feedback we got through the evidence, the APG, sorry. Of what people would like to see and have done. How you do that and some of the specific points around the issues that people have The report doesn't speak to that, and that is what we're looking at potentially for a second inquiry. I don't think it will be within the next few sort of months. It'd be something we might do into next year. But looking at the specific barriers that people have, and that's not just people with disabilities, that might be people from certain different ethnic backgrounds, and looking at what are the specific things that are preventing people and what are the things that can be done. And it might start dipping into those, specific things, specific improvements that could be made on a really localised level. So that's kind of the next piece of work, is to really dive deeper into those barriers and what needs to be done. This is where this probably just stops short of looking at those barriers. It kind of makes the recommendation of this would be great if this happened. We've not kind of done the bigger piece around why and how and what specifically. So I think completely take your point. Absolutely agree with it. I think there's more work to be done to really understand stories like yours. Yeah, thank you.
Charlotte, then Dave.
Thank you, Ben. That was absolutely wonderful. I wish to apologise that that PeakLaugh did not make a response. I took that one on board. I went through minutes. I had a look at what we've discussed in the past, and I felt that I couldn't offer a consensus. And I think the most important thing about RLAF is that we do have a consensus. We can discuss difficult topics, but we need to come up with a consensus response. I'm very interested in making a response to the APPG on behalf of PeakLaugh, and I think that's probably something that we should be looking to do. What is an appropriate time frame for that?
Anytime. There's no rush. There's no kind of set time that you need to respond. I mean, you can write to Andy and Andy's office at any time as the chair. For now, the PAD the UK and Ramblers are stepping as the secretariat, so you can write it, send it to me, and we can pass it on. But I can give you all the details who to send it to. It'd just be nice to get the reflections of, and then it can be raised at the APPG meetings and inform the rest of the work.
So really if we did some work on that via email between now and the next meeting, which will be in February, and then we came up with our consensus response, which we could bring to the February meeting, would that be a reasonable approach?
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's a wonderful, wonderful piece of work, and certainly it highlights what the issues are, and I like the approach that we now we know what the problem is, what are we going to do about it? And I think that's great, and we would really like to be part of that discussion. So thank you very much, and thank you for coming and talking to us about it. It's brilliant.
That's no problem.
Could we have a show of hands, please, for people who'd like to contribute to that response? I certainly. Yeah. Yep. Okay. Brilliant. Thanks, everybody. I think that's a really important and worthwhile thing to do, especially as we didn't sort of put together a collaborative response to the consultation. Great. Dave.
Thank you. Just a quick comment, Ben. Thank you very much. That was really, really interesting. Some really interesting stuff came out of that. We at the Wildlife Trust launched our new 5-year strategy earlier this year, which absolutely puts people front and centre, and this really, really chimes with that, and there's lots of synergies within there. All about getting people out, experiencing wildlife, experiencing the outdoors, improving access. And a thing we need to really consider was the one thing that you said you didn't crack, was how do we educate people in the right way to responsibly use it. There's loads of mention in that report about responsible use, and we can crack it. We cracked it with recycling. No one was recycling when I was a kid, and everybody does it now. It goes completely against the grain to chuck a plastic bottle in the bin for 99% of the population. So we can do this. We can get people using the outdoors responsibly. And I speak as someone who's got a team who clears up fireworks from quarries every week, and clears people's tents away, and clears people's dirty sleeping bags and things like that from these wild places that we see on these walls. So it can be done, and it's through work like this that that we achieve that. Thank you.
Completely agree. Yeah, thanks.
Susan.
Thank you, Ben. Lovely aspirational report. I think we can all agree with that. But I'm going to say a little bit like what you've said. you know, education. We have it in the Peak District with fires and wild camping causing an awful lot of impact on the local community and a real worry for people. And I know that you're passionate for your sport, but there are also the landowners and the fishermen. You know, it's a hard balance, isn't it, to get that in. But that you do have to be optimistic and go forward. You know, every time I go out litter picking, 99% of people are picking it up, but there's 1% which are just causing havoc and mayhem and depressing the rest of us. The other thing I'd like to say, without being political, I'm really disappointed that you found it hard to get a Conservative MP. I'd certainly write to Kevin Badenoch about that, and I would hope that you would get, you know, these other ones that have been set up. You know, I know there's not many of them left, but I'm sure there are a few, you know, like myself, who are interested in getting out and really care about this. So, thank you.
And Phil?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ben. I was interested around the activity-specific codes. So we know we've had the Countryside Code. Really interested in that. Countryside Code, it does seem a little bit generic and it's a little bit fuddy-duddy, really. And I'm just wondering if we can kind of tap into social media, slightly more sort of, I don't want to say, you know, but kind of funky way of presenting some of this stuff. I mean, I'm wondering what codes, you say the paddlers have got one. I mean, is there a dog walkers code? Is there a wild campers code? I mean, do there need to be kind of codes for, you know, you could almost, you don't want to have a litter droppers code, but you know, you could break it down into things that are a bit more, you know, you could have a picnickers code or something like that. You know, the Countryside Code, it just seems quite old-fashioned. But if you can tap into what people want to do and give a code for that, maybe, and I don't know whose responsibility that is. I think the dogs, you know, you could have, you know, again, you know, a fire code or something like that, because the things that are really impactful here are wildfires, litter, dogs, probably top three for me. So how do we get codes on these that resonate with people, that people are not going to be put off because they seem to be preachy, they seem to be old-fashioned, and I do think a lot of it is because people don't know that they're not behaving in the right way. So it has to be kind of educational and supportive and not telly-offy for a lot of people.
Really. For my two penneth, can you remember those posters used to go at the swimming pool where it said no heavy pants? It feels like the Countryside Code's a little bit like that now. You just sort of walk past it, it's there, it's in the background. You know, and it's probably quite harsh, but it's just there, it's old, it's there, it's been there ages, it's not really changed that much, we've kind of got revised, but it's not, it's just the same. You can have as many codes as you like. You can have codes for every different sport. People won't read them. It depends on what you do with them, and that's what matters. So the reason we got the Paddlers Code in there was it was shameless self-promotion for Paddle UK. What we do with that is different to what they do with the Paddlers Code. So give me just one example. We've worked with retailers to get it onto swing tags and onto paddleboards. So along with our paddle safe campaigns, there's a QR code. There's information that they get when they buy their equipment. You know, we do a lot of social media around it. We've white labelled the Paddlers Code. It's got its own website so that the National Trust and the the Environment Agency, they can use it in their social media and adapt it. We've got videos, we've got really good imagery. Countryside Code is just there, isn't it? It's just sort of there and it exists, and there's no creativity, there's no drive. Natural England pumping that out on their social media, it's not going to get to the people who are making fires or leaving their cans around. They're not going to look on Natural England social media. It's about what you do with the code and where you put it and how you promote it. Education starts right there at primary school. It has to be there and go through. But where else are you going to put it? So yeah, I think activity code is really important, but it's about how and where you place it and what you do with it. I think the retailers have got a really big responsibility in there. You know, the manufacturing retail get a point of sale now. You know, the amount of people walk around with a North Face jacket on the high street. You know, just little things like that will start to make little changes, I think.
we're really short on time. We've lost our wee break. I'm sorry. So I think if we close the comments for this one, but we can pick it up in Rob's item, which is coming next. If you want to step in, Rob.
Sarah.
Yeah. Very sorry, Sarah. I forgot that you were presenting in place of Rob. I said I'm very sorry. I introduced Rob, and I didn't introduce you, who's actually and Sarah Rowley. And yeah, do please feel free to go for self-directed comfort breaks if you need to.
While they're setting up, I just wanted to say on the code, I went to a campsite recently where they had brilliant things about no fires and things on the back of the toilet door. They were Canadian.
Really?
I'm in a UK campsite, and it's brilliant communication about no fires, responsible camping from a Canadian
From a Canadian
code,
website.
because clearly they couldn't find good stuff based on the British one. So I think that really speaks to Ben's point.
It does indeed, doesn't it? Sarah, go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Sarah Rowley. I'm part of the strategy and performance team here at the park. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to you. I'm going to talk you through some of the highlights from the visitation data from a project which we started last year. And as I move through the slide, you'll see in the top right hand corner there'll be a circle, and it'll just explain to you which data set some of these insights and thoughts come from. Just one thing to sort of say, that actually when we start to interpret visitor or tourism data, there's no one data set which will tell us exactly what we're asking. So what we have to try and do is take lots of different data sets and then blend them together to kind of illustrate how the park's used. So I'm just going to talk to you first about the National Park Authority's visitor survey. So we kicked this off in 2024. Ooh. Blimey, hang on. Just get that back, there we go. So we kicked this off in 2024, and that was in response to, again, members, community, lots of feedback that something had changed in the way that people were visiting and interacting with the park. So we couldn't do a boots on the ground survey like had previously been done in years before, just because of budget constraints. So we had to ask a research panel to do the work on behalf of ours, and we used an online panel where we surveyed people's responses. And we conducted 2 survey waves, an autumn, a winter and a summer wave. And that actually gave us good temporal variation across the year. And the full sample was 1,240 responses for last year. And basically that work continues. So we've done a lot of that analysis work. There is a full sort of presentation. This is some of the highlights, but there is a full presentation on all of the details. If you want to watch that back, it's on YouTube. I can share the link with you. But we're going to continue with this visitor survey. So the 2025 survey is currently running. We've had a slightly reduced sample size to 1,000, just because, again, budget constraints. But this still gives us a good sample size in terms of statistical integrity. And we will communicate those results in Q1 of 2026. So again, I'd be very happy to come back and share those with you if you're interested. So what I'm going to show you now on screen here, this is basically our main visitor catchment. And this is based on mobile location data. So what we know is that about 75% of visitors that visit the park will come from this pink area. And basically that means the edge of that is around about 1 hour's travel in a motorised vehicle into the park. So I don't know if you're familiar with mobile location data and how that's collected. I'll just explain to you. So when you have a mobile, it basically will record where your location is, and that's based on mass, and it collects the pings. Now, we have a provider that gives us mobile location data for the whole of the park. but it's only it only represents about 3% of all users, so it's not a count of individuals. But what it can do when we look at patterns, it can give us an idea of trends over the landscape. So back to the visitor survey now. I'm just going to talk to you about seasonality of visitation. Now, you can see here on this figure, this is kind of one interpretation of the rhythm of visitation across the park. So when we asked our respondents in 2024 when they visited, this is what they said. So quiet in the sort of early part of the year, building up into the shoulder spring, peak summer as we would all expect, dropping down into the shoulder, and then quiet in the winter period. And again, this is one interpretation of how people would come to visit the park. Now I'm going to show you some trail counter data. And again, this will give you a slightly different insight over people's visitation. So the first thing, I'm going to show you 6 years worth of data. The first one I'm going to put on is 2019. So this is pre-COVID. As you can see here, slightly different sort of pattern than what we had before. You've got the sort of bank holiday spikes, the summer, and then it drops off into the winter period. So this is 2020, this is the COVID pandemic year. And as you know, we were obviously all locked down. Everybody got let out of lockdown, it spiked massively, and then it dropped off again because we went back into a lockdown period. Now this was kind of the catalyst that something changed. There's great consensus that visitation has changed since COVID. Whether it had changed or was changing pre-COVID, we're not sure, but we kind of look at this as a change point. So these are the subsequent 4 years, and as you can see, the patterns that we're seeing in those years are very representative of pre-COVID. And actually you can see that whilst 2021 was still higher, it's starting to drop off, and the 2024 year was actually a little bit less in terms of usage of the trails than 2019. And again, we've got to look at this data for what it is. This is trails data. So again, this might be more traditional usage, people who potentially are quite au fait with the outdoors, they might get a map, they know exactly where they want to use the trail, etc. And perhaps we've got a different type of user coming in and experiencing the great outdoors now. So just hold this pattern for 2024 in your mind. I'm going to just show you. So that's the trend line from 2024, from that trails data, just flattened out. And what I'm going to show you now is the mobile location data for the Peak District for 2024. So that's it over the course of a year. Can you see where there's differences? So we've got some significant changes here to what would be the winter season. And they're very much in contrast with that figure that I showed you at the beginning when we said to people, when do you visit the park? So these are potentially people who are visiting, but they're not in that traditional tourism bit. They wouldn't necessarily class themselves as a tourist or coming for a visit, for a stay, etc. What's going on in these two bits? This sort of confirms what we kept on hearing, that actually visitation's changed. The park's always busy. The rest that the park used to perhaps get during the winter season is no longer happening. We've got more people coming at more times. And we did a bit of investigation. I've not got it in this presentation, but we were talking with Chatsworth. Obviously, the Chatsworth factor, we wanted to look at that, whether some of that spike over the Christmas period was perhaps, attributing some of this. But it just didn't cover the whole piece. We've got now an extended off-peak season that we're trying to investigate and try and understand what's going on. So I'm just going to show you one more figure using this location data. So this is basically 3 areas, so landscape areas, and we can cut the data, however. And this is Mac Forest in the blue, we've got Kinder in the red, and Goyt Valley, Eastern Moors, and then Hope Valley. And as you can see, we know this kind of confirms what we know. The Hope Valley is just much, much busier. It's that real hotspot, and throughway across the peak, where most people come in from Sheffield and or Manchester to visit. But what does this tell us? You can kind of see this uptick in the January, February in the really busy sites. It's less pronounced. You can still see it a little tiny bit, but it's kind of giving us that indication that actually visitation across the whole of the park isn't increasing sort of proportionally. We are absolutely seeing more people visiting out of what we would expect for season. in certain spots and locations. So that leads us down that approach of how do we manage these areas? What do we have to do? How, you know, what can we do as a park to be able to help look at this visitation? So just moving on to transport, I've added these in because I know that we're going to talk a little bit about the active travel proposals later. So when we actually asked people how they travelled to the park in the visitor survey, 77% of people said they came in a car. Now that actually feels a little bit low. We've checked this with a couple of partners, and again I spoke to Visit Peak District and we sort of said, yeah, this feels low. But again, we have to look at that in terms of how was the sample collected, and we'll compare this for next year. Interesting as well, we asked people who came in an electric vehicle. Now 8% of people were saying they visited by an electric vehicle. And after the south eastern London, the northwest has the next sort of highest proportion of EV ownership in the UK. This could possibly account for that, but again, we'll test it next year and just see. They're nice statistics for us to be able to use as baselines. And then from the active travel perspective, we've got 35% of people said they come in on foot and 9% via bicycle. And again, we can use these as the active travel proposals kick in and we start to see change over time. These will be nice metrics to be able to compare and see any change. So this is Strava data. It's very difficult to be able to give you a full picture of how all this data sits for the Peak District, but these basically, these yellow parts, and this one right here in the middle that it generally glows white hot, they're the very, very high usage segment, and the rest of them, sort of the red and fading into the purple, are slightly below that. So as a national park, we have access to all of the Strava data for the park. This is walk, run and cycle data. I suppose you have to sort of bear in mind, again, like I said, this is one data set. It's only people who have Strava on their phone and who engage with it. It's not everybody. But again, we're sort of looking at how we can use this type of data to allow us to have more focused recreation management decisions based on usage. You know, where are the busy points? And that takes us on to this. So this again is a 3D map with Strava data on it. Does anybody recognise it? Mamtor.
That's Mamtor.
Yeah. So as I pointed out in the middle where it was glowing hot, you know, this is the route from Mamnick car park up to the top of Mamtor. I can't tell you how many people set their Strava for that little, you know, 5, 10, 15 minute walk. It's ridiculously off the scale. It's hard to compare actually in terms of the usage for the rest of the park. And again, this was sort of the data that when we started to look at this early doors, along with the fact that we were getting more and more information from the Castleton area, etc., from Hope Valley, from MPs, etc., we looked at what can we do as a park authority to be able to help convene partners. And as Phil said before, you know, bring people together to look at ways of problem solving or putting in some better management to help deal with this type of stuff. It could actually help us as well if we were looking at sort of high footfall areas where we might want to do footpath maintenance, etc. So how does that all fit in under the context of the National Park Management Plan? Well, you know, visitation is a factor affecting the landscape. And so, you know, naturally I'm going to use the word pressure, and sometimes that might be a little easier to think about. You know, visitation is a pressure on the landscape. People use the park, and depending on how people are accumulated across the park, that can provide pressure in certain places. But what we have to do when we're doing the work from the management plan is look at the factor in both positive and negative. And we've talked a little bit about it. You know, it's this stuff. We know there's some amazing benefits from people coming to the park and using it for recreation. We also know that when it's accumulated in terms of perhaps the more negative behaviour, that puts pressure on communities, etc. It puts pressure on the landscape, and we have to look at how we can balance that out. So just to know, I mean, from a point of view of us collecting data as a park, we collect the positive data. So, you know, we, within the visitor survey and or other stuff that we have access to, we try to look in and around at all the positive stuff that everybody, you know, the nation derives from coming to the park and the people who live here, etc. But we've also taken the step to actually widen out our data collection as the authority to look at how we can try to collect data on the more negative aspects of visitation. And that really is that stuff of, it's interesting that we're using this word behaviour. It is a behaviour, it's how people interact with the landscape, and that means it can be changed. But as we've just talked before, like there isn't a quick fix to this, and we need to look at it. But what we have done is listen to members, listen to community, try to work out that actually we need to quantify what's going on as best we can. So we've been collecting data on fire misuse, fly camping, as it were, you know, wild camping in its absolute form. If people leave no trace, it's great. You know, whether it's allowed or not is another thing, but it's when it's tents left, etc. Parking issues, irresponsible parking, overnight camper vans and vehicles, and then antisocial behaviour. So actually, as an authority, we've been working with other teams to try and look at standardising the way that we collect this data. So Rob and I are working on a specific app, which I'm going to talk to you about next, with the Ranger Service. But we're also looking at bringing in information that's collected by our corporate property team, car park enforcement, and our customer inquiries team actually collect information now when they get reports from the public explaining about some of this more negative behaviour. So, just to finish on the project that the Ranger Service, Rob and I have been working on, we've come up with a quick capture app. So this kind of does what it says, it's quick capture. So you use your mobile phone, any of the Ranger Service have access to it. When they're out and about on the ground, if they see something or if they're doing something positive like an engagement, they can literally take a photo and then press a button to register what's happening in the landscape. And actually, we've piloted this over the summer period, so we've had about 3 months of it, and we're now in the next stage of, okay, how can we use some of this data, how can we sharpen up the collection? As you can see here, it's been really good. We collect positive data like engagement sessions and how the rangers are out talking to people and having those positive experiences on the ground. We also collect experiences about volunteer sessions. But we've also been collecting those negative things. So this is, you know, fire misuse reports, and you can see the red dots, you know, fly camping reports, purple dots, obstructive parking, blue, vandalism reports are yellow. This data set, along with things like parking enforcement, etc., we're trying to blend these together, and this is a continual project of trying to understand what's kind of happening across the landscape. And hopefully, as I said, we'll be able to use this to make positive decisions about how we can help to manage the park in the future. Rob, is there anything that you want to add at that point?
Yeah, go through.
Yeah, I'll just add that. So this links to, some of you, when I was here last time, I talked about, you know, we were looking at how to review the Ranger Service and what that could look like and what we can do with Sarah. I certainly didn't join the Ranger Service to look at data, but we know that with expertise in the park, we can actually do that collaboration, and if we can have a more data-informed Ranger Service, we can then sense check that and know that we've got the right people in the right place at the right time. That's kind of the point. And it also sharpens up what does a Ranger Service do. Well, they can do two things here, can't they? They can collect and give us a shape and a size to what's going on in the park. And they can also contribute, whether that's kind of engaging with and trying to remove some of those issues, and also add in the positive that Sarah said. So really, for us, it's kind of becoming a smarter Ranger Service to deploy what resource we do have in the right place at the right time. And then, as you've kind of alluded to, Sarah, just kind of potentially using that data with other services to make funding bids to them. Maybe, you know, you work with county councils on sort of low-level vandalism and graffiti. You can say, well, we know this happens, you know, regularly on a Saturday evening at 5 o'clock. You can then put together some kind of local authority management plan with that. So it gives us options to talk about, you know, size, scale, and issues around and resource and stuff. So, thanks.
So yeah, you know, this is within our team. We are data people, we're researchers. This is something that continues. We'll continue to try and weave these data sets. As I said, in Q1 of 2026, we'll be kind of doing this exercise again. So visitor survey information and then seeing what else is there. I'm happy to come back and present again. Is there any questions or comments that anybody would like to?
I'm going to jump in and ask one actually. First of all, I think it's absolutely brilliant what you've done with that data. I think it's kind of the theme of today, isn't it? The kind of concerns about the authorities' grant and about responses already to previous reductions that you've had to reduce the kind of feet on the ground approach, but you've really embraced the tech, and I think that's really cool. And you've got some really interesting outputs. And I guess, do you think about doing any AI modelling to predict when the next bulges are going to be?
Well, as you may be familiar with David Alexander in our team, who is our AI expert, maybe. Yeah, potentially. Yeah. It's got a lot of futuristic sort of impact. But yeah. For example, we had been talking to the National Trust when we were doing some of this stuff in terms of actually trying to get trials on Mount Tor, because they were looking at how they can use AI and look at predicting what footfall is. One of the major challenges that we have in terms of the park, as you'll all know, it's like the biggest leaky site. We have no way of really understanding who comes and goes over the boundary, and that makes it very challenging. But as I said, I think some of these things that we're getting from the mobile data really give us some interesting insights, and then it's actually how do we change that by talking to our partners, merging with any data sets they have to have that really strong evidence base to then move forward with potential projects and plans, which, as Phil had mentioned, we'll be doing tomorrow as part of the Tourism Charter.
Yeah. That was ace, wasn't it? So just sort of following up on that, I was thinking about, we saw like Mac Forest is kind of classically sort of underused. Hope Valley really gets hit up. Maybe, then you could influence behaviour like, hey, Shetlandslow or Pickford Moor is your place for your sunrise photo, for instance.
So, we've had that conversation and it's a really tricky one because it's sort of, these are these bigger questions that we have to ask of, do we have sacrificial sites? Do we have sites that we put more resourcing into because we know that people want to come to it to try and accommodate that rather than dispersing people out into the landscape or other places? We haven't got an answer to that. These are the really knotty questions that we have to ask. But again, the whole social media bit, that figure that I showed you in terms of the mobile data, we absolutely know that we've got a bunch of maybe younger people who haven't got as much experience coming in to experience the park, and how do we actually connect with that new generation, whether it's Gen Z or whatever, of sharing this information of how to be responsible, how to practice responsible behaviour. And there's no answers, as Ben has said. It will continue to go on. But this allows us to at least start to focus in some of the conversations that we need to be having to help to try and manage some of the challenges.
Certainly does. Sorry everyone, I was using my chair's privilege to Jeff, go ahead.
Kind of just a query. So we all felt, we all knew that there was a big increase in access to the countryside sort of during and after COVID. So were those figures showing that essentially that's kind of dropped off to a more normal level since, is that?
So for the trails, we think that is probably the case. That trails data is only 4 counters of 4 trails. So Millersdale, there's 2 at Parsley Hay that includes the Tisterton Trail and 1 more that I can't quite remember. But again, that would be the direction of travel that we think. We think that it's actually dropped down to around about what it was pre-COVID.
And the other thing is that I've thought is that seasonality as such doesn't really exist so much anymore. That the place is at a busy level kind of right through the year.
One of the points that I forgot to mention is actually on that data when we look at seasonality, Visit England have seen exactly the same change in visitation across all of their data. So this change in sort of seasons, and I think it's actually a trend which is continuing out across Europe, etc. That people have got different flexible working patterns, we've got different ways to be able to travel and times that we can travel. One of the other things that I sort of muse about as well is that we seem to be in this sort of, we've got into a culture of kind of, you've got to get somewhere, get there quick, cram it into a couple of days, go and see these places. Everybody's running around and cramming into a much shorter amount of time and doing stuff. And I wonder if some of that, people might have come previously for a 4-day or a 5-day maybe, and now they're coming for 2 over a weekend with. So, you know, all of these sort of things are just musings that we have in terms of what are some of the themes behind the change in data.
Louise.
Thank you. It's really interesting, and it's really, really encouraging to see the park pulling together all of the different sources of data that have been available. So things like the mobile phone data, I've seen being used commercially like that for years, but clearly that's now got cheap enough that the park can access it. So that's really, really good news, I think. So I'm chair of the Stanage Forum, and we are really, really keen to get, and I don't know if it's possible, I think I've said it to your colleague before, that to get this kind of data, but can we get it specific for the North Lees estate so we can see those mobile patterns, all this kind of data, because it, obviously, we're biased because we think it's great, but it's like a microcosm of the park. It's something that's managed by the park, and we can actually get some ideas around those patterns, because at the moment, a lot of our information is anecdotal. Yeah. So, you know, residents saying the parking's really busy all the time, and we know that winter is as busy. A sunny winter day at Stanage is busier than August Bank Holiday because of the nature of our visitors. And our visitors are different from Mamtal visitors, and they are different from Goit visitors in terms of where they're coming from, how they're coming, what they wanted to do. So I think if we can get that kind of granular data, that would be great. And my other thing to say was Eastern Moors Partnership have really great ranger and on-the-ground data. And my question to you was, to what extent are you able to incorporate, because they're doing visitor surveys with their funding, can you incorporate that kind of information from other partners into your data set?
Yeah. So first of all, in terms of the mobile data, it is still quite pricey. But we've started to prioritise it within our data that we need to get hold of because it is so useful. We do it in a partnership as well, so we can kind of accumulate. We do it with another couple of people, so we get better pricing on it. But the thing about sort of pulling down mobile data is it gets less and less useful when you're trying to pin down into smaller and smaller places. I can certainly have a look. I don't think we do have the North Lees estate as a separate polygon, but I'll have a look and see what we've got.
Or it could be that whole kind of section of the park.
Yeah. But again, you have to take it with caution, because what it can do is can show you a bit like I showed you there in terms of theme of seasonality. It can also give you an idea on perhaps peak times, but it's not that count of individuals, so it has to be incorporated. So in terms of the stuff with the Eastern Moors, yes, we are. So again, this fits in of how we're working with partners within the National Park Management Plan, and obviously a lot of this data has been presented to the partners previously, and that's kind of the hook of the evidence which we're taking through to the Tourism Charter to actually try and get action. But Rob and I have been talking about this in terms of the stuff with Eastern Moors.
Yeah, that's a nice segue actually, because we've actually done a couple of things with Eastern Moors. So really interested in exploring that trial there. If you think about it, is 9 members of staff over 3 months who have got a lot of other ways they report. So it's really what time they've got extra, they use the app. So there'll be a lot more data once we roll that out to volunteer rangers, of which there's up to 180 of them. Yeah. So you're going to get a significant amount more data, maybe too much, Sarah.
It's sort of, it's just like,
But with Eastern Moors, with Danny, we had a conversation, and what I'm really interested in, and this was not my idea, it's come from other colleagues in the park, but a kind of a virtual ranger network. So we've got colleagues at Derbyshire Wildlife Trust, and I think I mentioned this before about, I'm very much more interested in collaborating. This is what I call one of those wicked problems. It's much bigger than any one organisation. We say problem, like it's let's say the behaviours going on in the park. Sometimes when someone's doing a quote unquote negative thing, it actually turns into a really positive conversation and everybody's learned something. So we call it negative, but actually some of those can be really good opportunities. But with Eastern Moors, they're really interested in potentially replicating that, on us using a similar model. So we could, what I would love to see is various different networks of ranger type people, field operator professionals and volunteers around the park collaborating over one uniform data set, and that we all collect similar data, and then we can get around the table. Some of you know about Fire Operations Group, FOG. That's a partnership working model. I'd really like to do that with multiple, National Trust partners, RSPB partners, Wildlife Trust partners. We'd all collect data on a shared platform, we can get an overall picture, and then we can slice up, okay, interesting that we can talk about what I could do with 10 rangers, but let's talk about what we could do with 40 rangers, you know, and maybe 180 volunteers, great, but what about 500 volunteers? And because we're all facing the same problems. And Eastern Moors are very receptive to that idea, and they're ahead of us in some ways in terms of their kind of data-informed modelling, and they've got drones. We've done workshops with them about drones and how you can look at kind of wildfire prevention with thermal drones, and we've taken that forward kind of through learning with them. So we are working together, and it's very exciting what they do actually. So hopefully we can do more of that.
Awesome. Ian,
quick.
and then, thank you.
I'm very interested in AI. I'm a bit of a nerd, and I've been looking at some of the real experts in AI and the future that's predicted. There's going to be a huge stress on outdoor spaces, because if some of the plans go as they suspected, and no one really knows, a huge percentage of the population will not be working. Things will be made very, very cheaply using robots. My job, I was in tax law, completely redundant very shortly. So the idea is that probably what will happen is that governments will take tax from manufacturers, because manufacturers will be making huge profits. Only robots don't cost a lot to pay. So what the consensus is that in 15 years' time, quite a large number of people worldwide will be paid not to work. And the question is, what are they going to do? Well, they can either play video games, or they can go and entertain themselves going outdoors. That's going to be a huge pressure in 15 years. I will not be around then.
Yeah, thanks. There's lots and lots of factors that are going to change, and I mean, we've not even talked about climate change. We've got some significant things that are happening now and moving along that will change the way that we do things. So, yeah. Great, I'm just going to give you a very, very brief update in terms of the National Park Management Plan. Sue had asked me to just cover this. So when we kicked off the plan in 2023, we decided to look at the way that we engaged with all of the partners, just because, as you know, there are lots and lots of stakeholders of the National Park Management Plan. It's a huge group. So we basically have a group which is called the Wider Stakeholder Forum, and this is, we communicate with all the people that have a stakeholder in the National Park. It's over 70 organisations, but if you count all the individual parishes, it bumps up even more. Most of the communication that we've done with the Wider Stakeholder Forum, just because of resources and the way things have happened, has been over email. And I did speak to Sue about updates that came through to the LAF, and I think we'd ended up with the wrong contact, so we'll make sure that we change that. And as I said, you know, I'm happy to come in and give you updates if that helps. So just to overview the management plan, we have 4 aims. Below that it sits 10 objectives. Below them 10 objectives sits 50 actions. And then below them is 112 critical success factors that is delivered by partners, including ourselves, to be successful for the management plan. So we had to look at who was responsible for which actions and try and look at targeting our engagement with those partners who had the majority of actions to deliver, to try and ensure the plan stayed on course. So we also have a delivery group which meets probably about once every quarter, maybe 3 times a year, and that contains partners that have the majority of actions, and that's to keep the plan moving forward and delivering. We're in year 3 of the plan now. On top of that, we've got the partnership group. So this partnership group is largely the senior leaders and chief execs of the organisations that mainly deliver to the National Park Management Plan. And it's the partnership group that will be coming together tomorrow for the Tourism Charter. And this generally has, you know, the local councils, the water companies, it's got Chatsworth in there, National Trust. It's the big organisations which potentially have resources, the money, etc. to deliver the management plan. I won't cover it a lot on it, I'll skip over this because of time, etc. But as Phil had mentioned, the Levelling Up and Regeneration Act and the change to the duty has been a huge change in terms of how we actually interact with partners. Just in terms of that duty, it basically, the guidance on it is that that duty to seek to further our purposes is not a passive duty, it's an active duty. And that basically means that any relevant authority, so that's any Ministry of the Crown, has to take reasonable steps to explain how the statutory purposes of the protected landscape or the national park can be furthered. So there's a lot of this legislation we were unsure whether that was going to get challenged as part of the changes with the planning bill. Great news yesterday is that this legislation will stay in place, and that just gives us a little bit more leverage working with our relevant authorities to make sure that anything that's in the management plan actually gets put into practice. And that's the visitation workshop, so I'll skip over. And then finally the performance monitoring. So we're in year 3. We kicked off and had a new digital report designed at the beginning of, at the end of year 1. So this report is a bit like all of the other authority reports that have gone online now. You can see the link there. We can share that around if you want to access it. You can get to it via the management plan page on the website. This report builds up into sort of a central repository, so it's got the capability to hold reports, news articles, updates, links, etc. And what it does is you can very easily click into the area of the plan that you want to see, and it also has a RAG status traffic light. So where previous reports were static on an annual basis, this one now allows you to see direction of travel over the 5-year of the plan. It's much easier, more accessible, and it reflects the breadth of the partnership working because our partners actually submit updates on an annual basis, so that we bring that together and we get a much sort of more harmonious voice rather than it just being authority narrative. So you know, go and check that out. We'll be doing year 3 in the new year. And that's me.
Thank you very much, Sarah. In the interest of time, I think at this point all we need to do is to nominate and agree a member representative, please. Do we have any nominations?
Yeah, if I can just add to that, it's traditionally been the chair of the Local Access Forum. So it's currently, all the updates are still going to Louise, so it's seeing whether Louise is...
I've never had an update.
Oh, have you not? Oh, okay. Okay, all right. So because we have a rolling chair, it doesn't make sense to give Claire's name today and then Claire disappears. So it's I'm perhaps looking at the vice chairs to see whether one of the vice chairs or if another member of the Local Access Forum would be willing to volunteer.
Well, Martin and I can have pistols at dawn over it, but yes, I think one between us we can do that. So, John Thompson was a great advocate of the National Park Management Plan and the role that the Local Access Forum could take in delivering. I stepped up when John was ill. And I think I was the last person that was actively involved. Louise was chair after that, but I don't think as a Local Access Forum we had any involvement. We did try to find out what was going on, and I really, really welcome that we are now, I don't want to look back, just look forward, that we can now be involved in moving it forward. So I do think it is a good idea that it is it is a vice chair role, and I think Martin and I between us can make sure that there's somebody always actively involved in that. So thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you. Okay, on to the next item, which is Anna and the Murridge Hills Access Plan, please.
So you'll see from today that I have many hats in the organisation. So I'm currently doing a few extra hours each week for the Morridge Hill Country Project. So has anybody heard of this project before? No? Some of you maybe? Yeah, so I'll do a brief overview. But if there's any kind of general comments or questions about the project, then I'll give the project manager's email at the end of this, or I'll send it to Sue if there's any kind of general project inquiries, because I'm just working on the site access plan part of it. So just a bit of an overview of the project. So it's quite a big area going from Worslow at the bottom corner, and this is the Roaches, this is Gun Hill. So there's 21 farmers and landowners, almost 3,000 hectares in the area, and it's in that kind of southwest part of the park. The main landowners are the Peak District National Park, Staffordshire Wildlife Trust, Ministry of Defence, and obviously a lot of private landowners as well. They're currently in a 2-year development phase, and then the hope is that they'll be successful in going into the delivery phase, and that should be a 20-year plus project, so it's quite a long-term project. This is a bit more of a breakdown of the time scale. So we're currently kind of in this phase where they're refining all of the plans and getting that delivery phase proposals together to hopefully submit by May 26. And then there'll be a period of negotiation with DEFRA, and hopefully they'll be successful in getting that delivery phase and the 20 years post that. So the ambition of the project is to provide hope and inspiration for enhancing biodiversity in one of the world's most visited national parks. So the real kind of focus is on more sustainable land management, and maybe diversifying land use and working with farmers to create a more connected natural landscape which sequesters and stores more carbon and is resilient to future changes. So they're looking at kind of various aspects to this. So the project is funded by DEFRA in conjunction with the Environment Agency and Natural England, and as I said, if the delivery phase is successful, it's going to be 20 to 30 years, so a really long-term project. And then, as well as encouraging sustainable land use, they're looking at cultural heritage, improving access, education opportunities, and volunteering opportunities as well. And there's no certainty of what can get funded, but the focus in terms of access that I'm asking you to help me kind of look at today is going beyond the general maintenance level that we usually do. So really pioneering access and, you know, not just kind of fixing gigs here and there or styles or signage, but real impactful access work. And obviously there's some kind of concern because there's rewilding aspects in this project, and that obviously has an impact on access sometimes, but that impact is considered and will be absolutely, you know, within all of the proposals. They'll consider things like impacts on fencing in terms of access and things like that. So my kind of work within the site access plan involves recording the existing access, assessing the need to improve that existing access, identifying opportunities for new or additional access, and ways to connect to local travel infrastructure. For those that know that area, there's about 3 bus stops in the entire Morridge Hill area. So there's not much local public transport infrastructure, and also 2 public toilets. So there's definitely a lot of potential to increase and better access in that area. So yeah, we're working on a management plan for that access infrastructure, and also looking at kind of cultural heritage and access to historical sites as well. So hopefully you've all got a table of the proposed routes in the area that have kind of been identified through consultation with National Park Rangers, rights of way staff here, estate managers, cultural heritage team, Staffordshire Wildlife Trust, Peak District Mountain Bike Group, and also informed by Strava data from Sarah's team as well. So if anyone has had a chance to look at that before and has any kind of ideas on what are the priority routes within that, that would be really useful. Or if there's anything I suppose to add. I guess we haven't consulted with horse rider groups yet, so that's one thing that hasn't been captured yet. So if anybody here has that, can input into that, that would be really great. I've got a few kind of maps here of the proposed routes, which will hopefully make it a bit clearer if you don't know the numbers of your rights of every right of way in the Peak District. So this is the Roaches. This is Lud's Church, for anyone that's familiar with that area. So a lot of the proposed routes are in the Roaches because that's the place that's seeing the most visitor impact. And I'm sure if anyone's visited the Roaches recently, there's a lot of erosion. So there's a lot that can be done there. So yeah, this is mostly about kind of erosion control and limiting the damage that's happening in terms of visitor access. But there's also potential to create kind of more ground routes and improve the surfacing and things like replacing stiles with gates. So I don't know if anyone had comments on those routes in particular, if anyone's kind of familiar with the area, or it can be done at a later time when you've had time to consider. Further down, the bottom end of the Roaches, this is Hencloud and Ramshaw Rocks. So obviously again they're really busy areas, and yeah, they're seeing a lot of kind of erosion. I think this one had the potential to be possibly made wheelchair friendly. So yeah, any kind of thoughts on those, or which are the absolute priority routes, would be really useful. And then going down into Worslow, this is a slightly less visited area, but again there's a lot that can be done in terms of access improvements and signage. So, and then this was Gun Hill, and that was one that Staffordshire Wildlife Trust said could absolutely be made wheelchair friendly, and it wouldn't be that difficult. So that could be a really good one to do. So I'm kind of sensing that people aren't that familiar with it, or yeah. Should we do? If people have got questions.
Yeah, I'm going to use Chair's privilege to speak first again. I think this is a really brilliant area to concentrate on. I do some planning for an orienteering club. I'm pretty active as an orienteer, and Worslow and Gun Hill in particular, and also the Coleshaw up beyond Hollands Clough, sort of north of Hollands Clough. They're fantastic places to put orienteering events because there's loads and loads of footpaths, not concessionary, just existing footpaths. And you really can't see them on the ground. They don't get a lot of use. So I think it's an absolutely great place to, we were looking at the heat map in previous talks about some areas really get hit up. There's some absolutely stonkingly nice places around Brandside and that sort of in the north part. It's beautiful, lovely big ridges. Hardly anyone goes there. It's cracking. Everyone's on Crome Hill, aren't they? But anyway, right, I'm going to stop talking beyond saying I think this is a fabulous initiative, and I'm going to hand it over to who had their hands up. Louise, go first.
Okay, so I'm speaking on behalf of Austin here, who can't join us today. So Austin is and for the next few weeks anyway, he's still British Mountaineering Council hill walking rep. He's also very active in leading guided walks and navigation courses, etc., in the Staffordshire Moorlands, and runs the Staffordshire Moorlands Walking Festival. Okay. And he's also on the Staffordshire Laugh as well as this Laugh, which is stuttering back into life as we speak, hopefully. So, so he sent us a few comments, which were, I think like Claire, he really sort of welcomed the project. I'm really pleased to see the consultation that's been going on. He'd be really keen to be involved in any kind of future consultation, knows the area really well. And with his BMC, although soon not to be BMC, hat on, the BMC, so it's obviously a really popular climbing area with the roaches and everything else, but the BMC also represents hill walkers and has an ACT fund, which was active in, I think, repairs on Route 81. Okay. So there's already a kind of precedent for BMC. It's both money and volunteers that BMC can provide. So where there are routes that are kind of relevant and where it would be useful to have that additional funding and additional volunteer time, Austin's really happy to talk to you about that or point you in the direction of talking to somebody at ACT. There's also the Mountain Training Association, who I think also will put groups of volunteers out as well. So he could be a really useful contact in terms of some of that. And I know ACT have done work with Staffordshire Wildlife Trust already, so they're probably really aware of that sort of link. Mm-hmm. And the other thing he said was, is Oliver Hill in the boundaries of this?
Oliver Hill. Where is Oliver Hill?
It's an Ethel and a former county top. Axe Edge?
It's not, because I mapped the Ethel, so I don't think I would have remembered an Oliver Hill.
Anyway, so I'm not quite sure. Yes, I think this is relevant, but just north of Oliver Hill, a boundary that was once an aged wire fence has been replaced with a high tension fence which is impermeable to walkers. An access point would be valuable, and concessionary Fipple style route linking the access land north of Axe Edge Green Farm to the nearby road. There may be others, so just I guess there's opportunities to talk through with him as well about more opportunities for that.
Thank you. Okay. Do you have his email, Sue, that you can press on?
I will forward Austin's email, and it's very welcoming that Austin will feed in, and I'm sure there'll be other members keen to feed in as well.
Thank you.
Ben, did you want to say something?
Yeah. I think it's brilliant. It sounds great. I know this area pretty well. Spent quite a bit of time there doing outdoor education and stuff. That's a good. I'm going to just provide a bit of challenge, maybe, as to the thinking as to what's this new access supposed to do? Who's it for? And how does it connect to the wider project? So I think all those are quite big questions. So what struck me, I think it's great, and it goes back to something I said in my presentation around what does good look like and what does better look like. Good looks, for me, in this forum, is some path improvements, some new signage. That's great. We'd all appreciate that. But what does better look like, and who is it we're trying to do it for, and who are the groups you're not speaking to? And that's always a tricky question, because it's who don't you know. But there's some groups on there that you mentioned you're consulting with that are just, or existing users. Who is it who's not using this space? How is this connecting to the wider project and the purpose of the wider project around I think you said it was to raise hope around biodiversity. How does the access piece connect to that? And I don't recognise Morridge Hill. Sorry, I can't read that. I haven't got my right glasses on. I don't recognise this as an area. I just think of it as the roaches and the kind of.
Yeah.
If this is all part of a project and this is all part of those like pink bits, how is this going to create a destination, an area, and the connectivity between these different areas? So I was kind of looking at it from a zoomed out point of view. Is what's the purpose of the whole project and how does it all tie in? Who is it you're not speaking to who could benefit from this? And how do you make this more of a destination through those access routes connecting? Sorry, that might be a bit obscure, but it's just a bit of a different perspective maybe than just zooming in on what are the bits of path that we could tidy up and the new styles we can put in.
Yeah.
Because that's good.
Yeah.
What's better?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think as you said before, there isn't really much of a consensus or a strategy within DEFRA on access, and I think that's reflected in the guidelines for the site access plan here, because it's kind of just like improve access, and the gold standard is access for all and wheelchair accessible, and that's kind of the whole guidance that we have. So there's not kind of specified target groups that we're supposed to be kind of improving access for. It's just for everyone. So yeah, it's a challenge to kind of focus efforts, and the nature of the landscape there. It's never going to be all fully accessible. So yeah, we're just kind of focusing on what is possible at the moment, and if we can get some routes that are fully accessible within that landscape and tie them up to public transport links, then great. But yeah, what is that kind of gold standard in the groups that we're not reaching? I can't answer that question at the moment, but I'm happy to put you in touch with the kind of project manager to get that more strategic approach of the whole project and its aims, if that's helpful.
Anna, is there a timescale for responses or kind of comments on this? I'm kind of conscious of limited time left today.
Yeah.
Is there a time at which you expect to have all comments back?
Yes. So basically January. Mm-hmm. Really.
Great.
Final. I'm wanting to start surveying these with volunteers in the next couple of months. So it would be great if the comments could get in before those surveys, and what would be really useful if there's any kind of specs that you know of kind of what is gold standard for horse access or wheelchair access, because we don't actually currently have a survey form that captures that. So I'm kind of starting that from scratch. So any advice around that would be really helpful in the next month.
Next month. So responses by email to me, I guess, or at the moment, I think. Yeah. Charlotte, did you want to?
Yeah. So I can help you with the horse riding side. I can also help you with the specifications. There's lots of information on the BHS website, so I can signpost you to all of that. The thing about the exciting thing for me about this is that it's prime pack horse route country, and as we all know, I love a pack horse route. They were the old motorways. They connected the large conurbations, and there are so many of them. The Mermaid Inn, which is now sadly no longer an inn, was a major crossroads for all those old pack horse routes. And so that is an interest beyond what is offered by the Roaches. It offers an interest within the wider Morridge Hills. So yes, I'll certainly be in touch, and I'll point you in the direction of those that can help.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, in the interest of time, which is rapidly getting away from us. Sue is going to speak briefly on behalf of Jill on the DCC ROIP, and then we can segue straight into Sue's access update, please. It's good to have Mike Rhodes era tech issues.
I'm not doing the presentation, so I'm just going to rattle through the next few. Sorry. I'm just going to rattle through the next couple of items. So Jill Millward isn't unfortunately unable to attend to today. So in terms of her item, Jill has provided one of her usual comprehensive reports with lots of details, and she sent round some information about the steel cotton rail trail as well, which we're delighted to see. So you've all got goodie bags about this, and it is a station-to-station walks along the Hope Valley, which links in nicely with the active travel report, which we'll be giving a very brief update on later on in the meeting. If there's the other items to note from Jill's report, is that there's been 2 consultation responses attached, so they've been brought to the full forum meeting for you to see those. And those 2 consultation responses, one on definitive map modification orders, and the other one is on the Hope Valley master plan. And the other item to report for Jill's report is the fact that there will be a meeting which we're looking to set a date for in January for meeting with Derbyshire County Council Rights of Way, Rob Greatorex. So Rights of Way and Highways to consider the upcoming schemes for works on over this coming year. So that's something that the local access forums have always had input to. So that's items of update on item number 8, and if I may move across to present the report for item number 9. That's the access update, and again I will be brief on that one. Because what we cover in the report on the access update is about the DEFRA access funding. So we gave an update, or I gave an update to the last meeting about what had been delivered in year 3, some of the things that we were looking at for year 4, so those works are progressing. And I would like to come back and tell you a bit more about those works when we meet in the new year at the next full forum meeting. Another item on access funding, so I've given a very brief overview of the following on from the update to the October last year's October 2024 meeting about the Peak District Foundation's Path and Trails appeal. I've also given a brief update in this report about the remaining funds in the Authorities Access Fund and the fact that it still continues to receive income from the Miles Without Styles handbook sales. And the funding is allocated towards enhancing accessibility on the 2 routes which relate to the donations given towards those routes. 2 other quick things. Ease of use survey, which so Anna, we're in contact with Anna when she was saying about how we survey routes and forms. Yes, we carry out audits and survey a percentage of the rights of way network, so this is a very useful base for Anna's work with volunteers, and we've set all that up on a field-based system. So what we can do, we can use that as a base, and we can draw in some other information about particular interests and users.
and that came out at 85.64% of footpaths and other rights of way being easy to use within the Peak District National Park. That includes waymarking, condition of the path, structures and obstructions, and again this is some of the monitoring that our rangers carry out. Okay. And finally, I've attached a letter on the Countryside Code. We've heard quite a bit about the Countryside Code. There was a survey that carried out, and the responses from the LAFs has been sent through as part of the stakeholder survey, and so we'd expect those conversations to continue. Thank you.
Thanks, Sue. So the next agenda item is Tim. Is that? Oh, sorry. I do apologise. Have we got any comments? Yes, we do.
Just a really quick comment that following up on Sue's update on the Access Fund and the National Park Foundation, kind of in discussion with Charlotte and Martin and Claire and with Nick, we thought we wanted to invite the foundation to come to a future meeting to update us on the Path and Trails appeal, both in terms of what they're doing and how they're doing it, but also to encourage them to kind of talk to us about where we think actually it would be really useful for that funding to be directed, and the connection between the priorities of that fund, our own access fund, and kind of, basically what role the LAF can play in supporting that work and working with the foundation. So if it's okay with the rest of the group, we'll send that letter and see if they can come to the February meeting.
That sounds ideal. I didn't mention in actions that part of the kind of work of the LAF behind the scenes at this time of year is to plan the focus of the next couple of meetings, and it looks as if kind of funding of all sorts is quite a hot topic at the moment, so I think the February meeting will be a great time for that, to be confirmed of course and agreed, but that's it. That sounds like a really good idea. Right, over to Tim. I think the computer's rebooted for you now, but I'm not sure. Oh, you're just talking.
Thank you, Chair. Fairly brief report that's been circulated, and it's for the Local Access Forum to note the report. As you hopefully all will be aware, we received £100,000 from Active Travel England in 2024 to develop an equivalent of a local cycling walking infrastructure plan. We established a subgroup of the Local Access Forum to help us with this. We spent quite a lot of time gathering information from our highway authorities, landowners and yourselves to help to inform that plan. What we did was focus on a strategic high-level network, which was basically existing trails, looking at Derbyshire County Council's key cycle network and the Sustrans network as well. And it's enabled us to come up with a plan which is attached to the report that you saw. So there are a number of existing routes on there that are shown as solid lines, and ones that are dotted lines to places where we would like to deliver routes into the future. The funding was extended to June, and we've used all that funding. We submitted the plan to Active Travel England. They're very happy with it. It's also been approved in draft form by the National Park Authority in May. As part of the work, we worked with Yorkshire Dales National Park Authority to put together an economic business case which Phil Jones Associates developed for us, which we think will help us to find funding in the future. We've also done some feasibility studies, which again, we're hopeful that when funding becomes available at some point, they will help us to deliver on additional routes. Also within the report, there is mention of a response to the active travel consultation that Cheshire East Council held recently, and that response has been attached to Appendix 2 to the report. Bit of a bonus for you today, so not on the agenda, but I mentioned to Sue that it was probably worth informing you about it. As you may be aware, we are refreshing our local plan. It's currently it's basically a 5-year process where we go through that. We're about to go out on our next Regulation 18 consultation in November, and the indicative date at the minute is the 3rd of November. It just depends on whether we can get all of the printing and everything done to get all the consultation material sent out to parishes, but it will either be the first full week in November or the second full week in November that we'll be doing that. We're looking for comments on our policies. This is our policy direction where we think the plan will be. Of particular interest to the Local Access Forum, there are two elements within the transport side of things. The National Park Authority currently safeguards land on the Monsell Trail and the Transpennine Trail for future rail development, should that come forward. Based on the consultation that we did last year, the proposal is that we will remove that safeguarding for rail and that we will safeguard both routes for their current use as recreational trails. And that is one of the proposals, is to drop that safeguarding and then change the safeguarding. The other thing that we're proposing to do is, I mentioned that within the network map, there are some places where we've got indicative lines where we'd like to go, and in some places we're fairly sure where they are. And so we're also proposing to safeguard land for potential future trail development between Bakewell and Roseley on the former railway line, and the former railway between Buxton and the Goy Valley, because these are places where we think that we would like to deliver schemes in the future. Safeguarding is basically meaning that other development will not happen on those locations that would prevent them being brought forward as trails. So they're the really important ones for you guys, I think. Perhaps equally of interest would be the Recreation Hubs policy, which is also out for consultation. So what I will do is, once we've got the definite date, I will pass that on to Sue and we'll get it circulated around the group. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Tim. Comments? Should we just note? Yeah.
Just on the rail safeguarding. So is that going to have consultation already? I mean, because obviously Pete Rail are going to be a bit grumpy about it, aren't they, in terms of losing the Monsell Trail safeguarding, for instance?
We as part of last year, we did the Regulation 18 back in, roughly a year ago. One of the questions that we asked was, this is a suggestion. Do you agree or disagree? The question created the most responses of any other topic in the local plan review, more than housing, which was a bit of a surprise to me. And about 60%, just short of 60%, were in favour of changing that safeguarding and bringing it onto safeguarding for trail rather than rail. About a third were against it. So the desire is there, and it was across a range of stakeholders, so local authorities, parish councils and individuals.
Anybody else on that? Do we note and agree? Yeah, thank you. Annual report, Sue. And you have a copy of the annual report.
Yep. So I've tabled our brief copy of the annual report. If you'd like to look through and get back to me, and then what we'll look at doing as well is incorporating it on the website, because I think it just gives it just captures the Local Access Forum report. Perhaps make it look a bit more colourful. The other thing that I would like to do, and if everyone could do it just following the meeting or email me, scribble on your copies of the annual report what areas you cover as a Local Access Forum member, because I think that's very helpful for others to see. So whether it's a particular recreational interest, whether it's as a land manager, whether it's nature conservation, so it will just enable us to show to everyone the vast experience that all comes into the Local Access Forum in all our discussions and debates. And today's been a great example of all the feeding back on all of that and the debates that are taking place. So thank you for that.
Is it also worth mentioning our geographical areas of expertise? Just because I know almost nothing about the Eastern Moors, really. I'm pretty hot on the Goy Valley, that sort of bit of Staffordshire Moorlands. Is it worth just mentioning? I don't know if it is or not.
I think what we do with the local access forum is that we have that expertise across the whole of the national park. So what someone might see as an particular area of focus in their area, whether it's Staffordshire, we can look at what's happening over in Stanage and the Sheffield Moors area. So I think perhaps not the geographical expertise, because I think each member feeds into everything that's happening across the national park.
Cool. Okay. All right. So that was really just to note, wasn't it, that item, which takes us on to members' reports, and I've got an item from Charlotte on horsebox parking.
Yes, so the National Park have put up their prices of parking, and as ever, it causes a little bit of consternation. Also, on some of the car parks, they have lines painted on them. The majority don't have any lines painted on them. So if you've got a horse box and you go to a car park without lines, you can just pay the horse box charge. If you go to a car park which has lines on it, you then have to pay for the number of spaces you occupy. And there was some confusion as to whether you paid for 2 horse boxes or 2 cars or whatever. Anyway, it all took off on social media, as inevitably these things will. The British Horse Society stepped in, and our regional access and bridleways officer came from Rugby, and we had a very good meeting with Helen Carrington, and the matter has now been resolved. So thank you very much for the National Park to take on board what were the concerns, and also thank you to the BHS for coming and stepping in and just saying, right, we need to discuss. So partnership, working together. It was recognised that with the loss of core funding, that it was entirely reasonable for parking charges to be put up, and that wasn't what the problem was. The problem was how it actually worked on the ground, and that has now been resolved. And I think there will be a slight tweak to the signage just to make it a bit clearer. Thank you.
Brilliant. Good solution. Out of interest, do you pay, is it 2 cars or 1 horse box?
No, you pay per car space.
Per car space, yeah.
So,
yes. Thanks. Any other members' reports? No. So we are on to any other business, and I have an item on peak prescriptions, but I don't know who's speaking on that.
Yeah.
So this is my 3rd hat of the morning. So has anyone heard of the RSPB nature prescriptions before? So there's been some talk about green social prescribing, so hopefully you're kind of aware of that approach. I've only got a few copies left because healthcare professionals have got them all at the moment, but thankfully we've secured some more funding for some more copies, so we should have some soon. So this is the redesign of the original nature prescription, which was the first in England in 2023. So the Peak District kind of pioneered this approach in England, and the idea is it's a guided conversation with a healthcare or other support professional with someone they're supporting. And it's kind of a calendar of activities throughout the year that is accessible to all and is designed to get people connected to nature and out in their local green spaces and into the Peak District if possible. So this has been kind of redesigned with a focus group this year, and we launched it in May. and it's had really good feedback from all the healthcare professionals that we're working with. So we work with social prescribers, support workers, mental health support workers, older adult services, and we're looking at working with places like Blythe House Hospice at the moment to kind of widen the reach. So it's just to kind of, for you to be aware of today. It'd be really good to talk to Derbyshire Wildlife Trust about how we can collaborate with this as well, because I know you do a lot of health and wellbeing work as well. But yeah, it's just a kind of point of interest today, and if you know of anyone that might benefit from this, please do spread the word. If you know any healthcare professionals that aren't aware of this, again, please do tell them about it, because we're trying to get it across the Peak District and out of the boundaries as well. So yeah, that's just a kind of brief overview, and thank you.
That was lovely, thanks. Does anyone have anything to comment on Anna's piece? I haven't seen it, but I shall certainly be taking it to work to the Living With and Living Well with Cancer theme leader at the Christie, where I work.
Great.
So, thanks. Great. Any other items of any other business? Nope. In that case, just to note that the meeting dates are set for next year. So it's going to be the first Wednesday of February, June and October. So the 4th of Feb, 3rd of June, 7th of October. Nick will be chairing February and June, and the intervening period between now and then is a kind of handover period between the two of us. Items, the sort of focal themes of next year's meetings are not yet set. So if you do have a pet topic, then now is a really good time to raise it with the two current chairs and with the vice chairs. Thank you very much, everyone. I think we have more or less brought it back. We brought it back to only 10 minutes late. Let's go and enjoy the food. Thank you. Well done, Pat.